Good afternoon. Which is kind of morning. I had a rough night today. I thought I could sleep, but I'm in the middle of moving. And there's so much on my mind. So please disregard my puffy eyes. I put some hydrocortisone around there. We'll see if it works. But I didn't want to cover all this up with makeup because it's real. That's the way things are. We go through stuff. So I love the story of the Apostle Paul so much because in the beginning he had a really bad attitude, and he thought he was so sure that he was right. He was so sure, and he was kind of a bully and actively went around persecuting Christians. He didn't have an understanding of their faith. And that's what happens to all of us. Like, before you have this faith, you don't have a good understanding of it. Just kind of like when you don't have an understanding of another person's life and the things that they've gone through. You can assume all you want. You never ever know where another person is coming from, and it's difficult to have that faith in another person's intention because we all have this ego that is in place to protect us, really. There are good qualities about the ego, but it also can keep us from understanding the reality of a situation by protecting us from seeing the reality of the situation, which really, is for your protection. But sometimes you have to look beyond what the world is telling you, because your world can only tell you what your world knows. And that's the information that you have to work with. And that's okay. It's kind of like Paul, who he was so sure he was right. And just like a lot of people. But then this random light comes out of the sky and encompasses him, stops him in his tracks, and says, and he's like, who are you? What is this? And he's like, it's me, Jesus. Like, why are you working against me? And it's not until that moment something entirely supernatural has to happen for him to realize that these people aren't crazy, that there is a Jesus. It is supernatural. And, that, and just like to be sure it wasn't an illusion, Paul gets one instruction at a time. He doesn't know what's coming next. So he knows that something has affected him, that he was wrong, and he needs time to digest what just happened. So he only gets the next instruction. But he goes into the town where he's supposed to go, and he sits there blind for 3 days and has to be led around, in the darkness, knowing that something supernatural happened, and there's a good reason for it. And so he waits for his next instruction, and the whole trajectory of his life changes. And that's valuable for so many reasons on so many levels, because no matter what you believe already, what you're working on already, how your life is going. Sometimes God has a completely different plan for you. And even though God was there the entire time that Paul was rolling around working against him, Jesus was a real thing. And Paul was working against him actively, persecuting, stoning people to death, and like cheering them on. He waited. And when he was ready, revealed himself to Paul. And then Paul knew that he was God. So sometimes, it could be something as simple as working on a book that's really important to you, and knowing that there are already forces working against you that are just evil because they don't know who you are. They don't understand you. Have refused to open their eyes. Like, no matter the evidence, no matter the real other people in the world that are testifying to that person's good nature and divinity. Sometimes your work is interrupted. Your life is interrupted. Like, whatever you're doing is just interrupted. And then, like I said, it's just an obstacle. It's just a situation that you have to get through, on top of the burden that already was the work and the situation that you're in. You have to accept and find some way to transmute that situation into something productive. So sometimes your work can double or triple. But if you watch these videos in order, you can see that one of the things I clearly said is that that has to be your intention. Again, you don't know the plans that God has to prosper you. You just know the good lessons that you get, the framework that you build from like life's big old instruction booklet, and the experience that you have from dealing with other people. So unfortunately, I have to go into some uncomfortable situations to explain this. So especially dealing with children, it's like you have to give them a framework to deal with. Because, and like, the only reason I know this is because I didn't have one. So I had to learn how to develop my own. And I know that I would have been, much better off and much more functional had I had a system that works to operate within. And so it's really important for me to, without saying that, kind of create that situation. So it's kind of, another way I deal with everything. Like, it's just how you approach problems. So especially in this situation, when I'm already working on something, it's already a terrible situation. There are already people working against me, invading my privacy, not understanding why I do what I do, thinking it's their business to find out where I get money and what I do from day to day, even though my business is my business. And finally getting to the point where, like, I have to maintain my integrity. It's becoming abusive. It's really affecting my life, and I need to ask for help. But sometimes when you ask for help, without, sometimes there's no way to get help if you can't explain the situation without violating your original purpose. And again, like, you can't make that assessment until you ask for help, and there isn't any. So you have to first figure out, okay, if I have to deal with this myself, what resources do I have to be able to deal with it? So, what do you know for sure? Unfortunately, I know for sure how people operate generally. Which I worked with the public in a lot of different industries for a long time, and it taught me a lot about people. And that's even, after and during, I had a lot of different kinds of people, to learn and grow from. Unfortunately, like, it was really traumatic. Like, it's not easy to manipulate me, because I have been manipulated by the best, not because they're evil people, because of their own trauma and things that they've gone through. And yes, it is a thing, and I'm not ashamed that I've gone through those things, because I recognize those things now, and I can set healthier boundaries. I wasn't able to do that for a long time, because when you get so used to abuse, like, it really does, like, brainwash you. Your body thinks it's normal, and then when you're treated well in the beginning, you naturally rebel against it because you don't know how to deal with it. You're not used to that behavior. And it takes time to learn to recognize what's good for you and what's not. So I have this really, it is a valuable gift, and a lot of people don't appreciate it. I don't appreciate it a lot of the time. But it's like I have this really super annoying ability in this bank inside my head. So it's like, I remember, like, everything people say to me, how they say it, what their face looked like when they said it, like, all the way back from when I was like 2, probably. And like, it's stressful because all that information is in there. The other side of that is I also remember what I said to you, no matter who you are. Like, I remember everything. I wish I didn't. It's just, but I can recall, like, all the little details. And so I learned that instead of stressing me out and letting those things, like, roll around my head all together all the time, that it's just, it's in there. And I can access the information that I need when I need it. So, and that can be very useful in trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with people. And, like, why do they think that your business is theirs? And sometimes you have to test the waters to see what someone's intention is, and I understand that. That's okay. Sometimes it goes too far. Anyway, I don't want to it's not funny. It is funny, but it's not funny. But also, like, ultimately, like, you don't know what ultimately is going to happen. And it kind of was like a greater push to force me into dealing with, like, things that I really needed to work through anyway. So it was why, like, my eyes are all puffy. Like, I did go through a lot of traumatic stuff. It does feel at this time in my life like I don't like, who can I trust? Like, if you know who I am, I try to explain to you what's going on. And I didn't bullshit this whole thing. Like, I have always had these abilities. I learned that I can't talk about it because nobody's gonna believe you anyway. You know, and for a lot of time I thought it was evil, and I thought it was just something that I shouldn't um, be doing, and it was like a torment to me. Um, but I didn't have the understanding that there's, you know, a gift, and used properly, it can be a great benefit. Um, so on top of, it's nobody's business why I was doing what I was doing. Um, but I needed to explore certain things and look for patterns to make a point that I needed to make. And so then, like, I can't figure out who's fucking with me, but it has to be somebody that thinks mental manipulation is really entertaining, you know. So I solved this problem the way that I solve all problems. Like, what do I know for sure? What have I said? And what has been said to me? How does it connect to the problem? And so sometimes you have to pick out the pieces and figure out which input is meant to manipulate you and which is useful, right? It's all useful. It's just you have to figure out. So taking communication, the information that you have, the information that you put out, the information that comes in, can help you identify the people that are involved. Geography, quality of communication. When you learn a lot about people, you learn about how and what triggers them and for what reasons. And sometimes you can't say, but you need to use that information to figure out what is the proper course of action, right? So let's just say you're trying to weed through pertinent information and you're trying to analyze something already, and then you have to figure out like which subliminal messages are meant to throw you off and which you can use for your originally intended purpose. And then you're like, well, I might as well just use all of it, right? And then that's part of like what can you derive from what you know for sure, because if you think about it, you can get a lot of information from what you don't know, which is part of my theory. And you know, God is a zero knowledge proof. You know, when I like thought about that in the beginning, I was like, that's a pretty cool concept. It kind of applies to everything. And I was like, that's kind of true. And it is. Like, all of the information is there without telling anything for sure, right? So yeah. But if you can determine like what information you've given, then you can determine how that information is being used to manipulate a situation. And that's really important, you know. And like I said, everything has to do with relationships. And I, you know, had a person that I thought was my friend initially. You never really know who you can trust, and sometimes you have to take your time to figure that out. And the best way is not to ask outright, because manipulative people will manipulate that situation as well, and that's your answer. But the conversation that we were having is like, how do you know? Like, being I'm a very like, I'm more of a, yes, I have a lot of emotions, but I kind of think I feel with my brain first, if that makes sense. You know, in trying to explain, like, how do you know if you go with the person, say as far as relationships, like, do you depend on your feelings or do you depend on logic? You know, like, what makes sense? And the answer is both, kind of. But we had a mini conversation about how somebody sometimes looks good on paper, but then, you know, like, emotionally the interaction is not right. And I said something to the effect of, you know, like, I never show my papers. And I learned that a long time ago because I'm just kind of a freak of nature. And that's freaks other people out. So, or they just don't understand you, and I'm tired of explaining it, so I just don't. And, you know, the same thing is like when you were little, like, people just assume you're stupid, and then when you realize you're not dumb, then sometimes it's beneficial to just, like, let people think what they think and use that information to see, you know, who that person is. So, you know, for instance, this whole situation, like, somebody stole 2 out of 3 bikes from my balcony, right? And like a month before that, there was an email that went out about people stealing bikes, right? And how they even are so bold as to steal them from second floor balconies. And I'm like, well, that email is not consistent with the, like, normal ones, but I'm just gonna keep that information to myself. Anyway, that didn't irritate me enough. So maybe like a month, I don't know how many weeks later, this person stole 2 out of 3 bikes from my balcony. And then you have to think, okay, I guess that's kind of helpful because that's the 2 that I would have gotten rid of, and I have to move anyway because I definitely don't want to live in this neighborhood. But then you're like, it was definitely a person smart enough to know that had they stole the other one, that's a felony. And the 2 that they stole is not a problem. They can just take those and get away with it because nobody cares. So sometimes, even though you have valuable information, you just have to keep it to yourself for a while. Anyway, so then when you get together all of the information that you know for sure, and all of the information that you can derive from what you know for sure, and that's like a list that you can still build on because things will occur to you as you go, right? Sometimes you have to test the waters a little bit, see what else is going on, and pay attention to how people react to the situation as it has evolved, right? So then go back to, what is the question? What is the original question? What we were originally working on? And what information do you need to answer that question? This is important to the book that I was already working on because I was working on a project that involves humans and prosperity. Like I said, God knows the plans that He has to prosper you, and you don't. And if you're in the right mindset and the right vibration, He will provide more than enough material that you need to be successful. So, and that's kind of what I was saying initially. I think I said in another video something to that effect, and then, you know, okay, this is going on now. So I thought I was just gonna write a book, and now, like, we're gonna do a YouTube channel. And honestly, in the beginning, I didn't know why. I just knew that that was the next step. That's what I'm supposed to do, so I'm just gonna do it, right? Having no idea what effect that would have on, like, a few different groups of people, and that was surprising to me, but really valuable also. So I did say that I hope I could get more material from this, and, like, I didn't know what I was gonna get, but God's plan is greater. So when you go to All right, so what is the question? Sometimes you end up with additional questions, because problems come up that you didn't know you were going to have to deal with. And you have to learn to transmute that negative energy into something productive, either another productive project, or how can it contribute to what you're already working on. And that's useful in a lot of situations because people are different, people are hard. But people will show you what their best qualities are, what they're really good at and what they're really not good at. And so you have to organize all of those traits into a machine that works. And sometimes you have to move things around and move people around and realize some of their, opposing interactions can be a really beneficial machine if you put everything in the right places. Can we answer the question with the information that we have? And that's just how life is like. Sometimes the question even changes. We have to be adaptable. Sometimes your original intention, through the process, and like I said, the beauty's in the process. Don't worry about the outcome. Worry about the inspiration and the working on what you're working on, and being in the flow of things and just taking things as they come and using that information to get to the next step. Because if you think too far ahead, or if you're depending on a particular outcome, then you can miss what's happening now. And it's what's happening now that is the information that you need to work with. So if you vote yes, that doesn't mean don't have a goal. Have your goals, know what you want, but don't be attached to any particular outcome, because God's going to use, or the powers be, whatever you believe in, is going to use the process when you're operating in the present to show you what's working and what isn't. And you use that information to discover new things about yourself, new things about people, and you take that valuable information and move towards whatever plan God has to prosper you, which is your ultimate inspiration. You might not even be aware of what that is yet. So you have to be adaptable. You have to roll with the punches, and you have to understand that every person outside of you operates from their own pool of knowledge, from their own pool of experience. It has nothing to do with you. Nothing is ever personal. It's just that, you just have to observe the information and figure out where it fits, because there is no person that is better than any other person. There is no person that is more valuable than any other person. Sometimes a person is going to be more valuable as a part of an entirely different machine. You have to be able to assess that situation and make those decisions. But it's never personal. And you've got to learn to use obstacles to your advantage, because there are no obstacles. There's only experience, and experience gets you to the next step and to bigger and better goals that you never even imagined, and that's what God does for you. But you've got to remove the concept of negative opposition, because there isn't any. There's just resistance, and you want to go with less resistance so you don't inhibit your forward momentum. And that's really, really, really important. So there's a reason that I look at problems the way I do, and that's something that I will break down more in depth. I don't need to go into all the individual situations and traumas that got me there, but sometimes you don't know what is really going on. And it's so much easier if you're just direct from the get-go and if you just ask. But I did. This has been so important, and I do love this. I will keep doing it. But I had a very important reason for doing this in a very important order. And I didn't even know, like, I didn't even realize really until, like, today. And yes, like, obviously I have, like, it's been emotional. It is really emotional. That is valuable information when you realize that, like, the ego is so powerful and people are so willing, like, win at all costs is such a destructive energy to be in, because you cost yourself, you know. It's easier to just collaborate, and that was kind of the whole point from the beginning. All these faiths and religions and everybody so set on being right and so set on convincing other people to come around to their understanding instead of looking for the value in everyone's point of view and collaborating to come to peace. It makes sense to me. It makes sense to God. Like, how much sense does it make to you? Anyway, I love you unconditionally. I hope that you will like, share, and subscribe. I hope that when I finish this book, it might be 2 now, somebody will read it. But I love you very much. And for those of you who do support me objectively and unconditionally, I appreciate you to no end. Thank you so much. I love you. Have a good day.